So now we need to do a little bit of refactoring for our protocol method, specifically add space object method. And what this is missing is the ability to pass information back. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this method name and we're going to add a colon here. And we're going to pass an argument here of OW space object, and we'll call the variable name space object. So now when we call this method, we're going to have to pass a space object in, and we'll be able to use that information when we implement this method inside of the OW outer space table view controller. So anywhere we've used this method add space object, we're going to have to go back and refactor it in order to use the correct method. So let's first go to the OW add space object view controller.m, and we see that this is currently breaking. So we can type add space object, and we see now that we have to pass in a space object. Well, let's first create a new space object. So we can say OW space object, new space object is equal to self return new space object. And we know this method returns an OW space object, and we can set this equal to no new space object. And then we can pass this in as our argument for our protocol method here. So we can say new space object. And now this information is going to be passed when we implement this method. So how is that going to work? Well, let's go back to the OW outer space table view controller.m, and where we implemented, we did it down below here, our add space object. This is going to change. So let's retype this out. We can type void add space object, and we see that now we get the argument space object, and then I'm passing this new information or the encapsulated information from all the text fields on my new view controller back into this class, so the OW outer space table view class, so that I can display that information appropriately. So let's go ahead and just cut the code from our NSLog and our self-dismiss view controller, because we're still going to want that functionality. But inside of this method, we're going to add a little bit of additional functionality, and we're going to type if not self.added space objects. We're going to say self.added space objects is equal to NS mutable array alloc init, and then we're going to type below this self.added space objects add object, and we'll simply add our space object. So what's going on here? Well, we're actually using something called lazy instantiation that we'll talk a little bit more about in the future. But we're saying if the array self.added space objects does not exist right now, right? If not self.space objects, we're saying self.space objects is equal to, well, let's allocate and initialize it, right? Let's give it a value. So every time this method gets called, we check to see if the self.added space objects array exists, but we're only going to create it once. And this is really important because we don't want to keep creating a new array over and over and over again, because each time we would lose all of the saved objects inside of our array. So after we are sure that we have an array in order to hold our space objects, we add the space object that's passed into this method when the protocol method is called inside of OW add space object view controller, and we're going to add that object to our array added space objects, so that now this class has access to that object, and we're able to store a bunch of these objects inside of the array. So if we add more than one space object, we'll have a list of all of these different objects we've added.